Absolutely.
Terry, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Matthew. To ask me, a leg end.
A hospitality leg end.
I thought, and I went, well, if we're going to do a series of hospitality, and it has to be said, when I speak to anybody about Terry Loughins, the esteem that you're held in is unbelievable.
Jeez.
But that's true, and it's funny. And the one thing that came across from everybody that spoke to was the sheer enjoyment that you took from doing the job that you done. And that shone through, and that was the one thing that everybody brought up. And for all the years that I've known you, and the amount, you must have done thousands of events, sport and music. Now, obviously, it shows. But
I was wondering how much encouragement can go on. It's like a Northern Irish ticking time bomb. Excuse me. Of when's the slag going to come?
Stop them now.
No, but honestly, they just you really, the way I always looked at it, and I've even said this to people. It's a good event if Terry Loughins is there, and that was always said to the industry.
God.
How do you come back after that?
It's hard, Matthew, but God, I love it. I'm sorry, I'm going to take it on and go. Was he really that influential? No, I wasn't. I was part of a big organisation that gave me the opportunity. It really did. Diageo, as it is today, was Guinness Northern Ireland, and they had the vision, to do events, everything from a small trade promotion right up to U2 at Botanic. They had that ability, they had that budget to do that sort of thing. And I was lucky enough, to be honest, to be the face of it. I know Gerry has said, your face was in more magazines than...
Oh, yeah. You were photographed more than Princess Di at one time. So, it's like... in fact, I have heard people say you wore the Princess Di of the Northern Ireland.
What were some of the most memorable events that you were a part of?
God, Matthew.
To the nearest 20.
Memorable event. Do you remember the U2 concert down at the
Botanic?
You couldn't call it Botanic, more Queen's University kind of ground.
The playground, sir.
Eamon McCann, does that mean anything to you? Well, the guy that actually used to own the Limelight across the corner or across the street, and he had that along. I don't think he was with the MCD at the time, or he might have done it on his own. But it was massive. What was the tour? I'm trying to remember the U2 tour that was brought to that. Maybe you do, Matthew. But anyway, he had the idea that, and we had would you believe, 4 40-foot containers of draft beer sitting along the embankment. And trying to feed that into various bars which were lined just inside of the wire. Okay, and all the technical guys had set it up and it was perfect. And then Eamon decided that the way he would run the bar was a voucher system. Sorry? Well, yes, they'll go to a stall. It's as you make your queue, there'll be a box here and you'll pay money and you'll get a voucher to that value and you take it to the bar. Sorry. As soon as the concert started, they opened the bars and the surge towards the bar, literally and there must have been 5 or 6 of these sort of voucher system. They actually knocked them all over.
Class.
Literally collapsed them, and it was just like they hit the bars one on, sort of one, and the staff behind the bar. That was David Neely, by the way.
Yes,
he was the manager
right,
across the road. And it was like, geez, David, what are we going to do? And he said, don't worry, we'll do it. And God bless him, he did.
Class.
Because it was a class act. And that stood out almost from a disaster to something that, that's one of the best concerts that ever You know,
And it was, as you said, it was huge.
It was
I
huge.
don't think Belfast
anybody
ever,
understood how many
Yeah.
people were going to hit that one.
And it must have been, I know David Neely very well, and the only time Davies beat is when he wasn't there. Because
You'll never beat
just-
that
he
guy.
knows, yeah.
Never
He's
beat
class.
that guy. Yeah.
A rough guess, how many of the containers did you work your way through?
I think we sold out.
Seriously?
I mean, you know, it was massive.
Wow.
And I'm going to do a bit of promotion here. The best pint of Guinness you can get sometimes is one that comes out of that 40-foot trailer, which came straight up from Dublin, parked itself, you know, fed into brand new lines, into a clear plastic glass, which was never sort of adulterated with, you know, dishwasher or whatever, and into that. It was brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
And by God, did we sell out. So there you could almost say that commercially, that actually paid for itself.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wasn't going to ask you this question, but now I feel like I have to.
Oh, you
I actually
asked me,
I feel
yeah.
embarrassed about asking it, right?
Why?
Where was the best pint of Guinness you ever had?
Jeez, Gerry.
What have you got me into?
I think it would be fair
Am I
to say
obliged to
you've had
say
a
that
few.
John Hewitt?
I think it'd be fair to say you've had a few.
Oh God, there's, you know, to be honest, Matthew, we did have a problem in terms of consistency right across the board, and you're right to acknowledge that. It was all about trying to keep the standard of glass washing, clean lines, fresh kegs. And I can remember going into some establishments and seeing fresh beer sitting at the front and something that was 2 weeks old lying at the back because someone just didn't bother to rotate their stock. And the simple things like rinse aid, sometimes too much rinse aid in the glass washer.
Yeah.
And you remember that sort of condensation inside.
Yeah.
And you thought, what's that? And that was, you know, like rinse aid. And so it's very, very difficult today to say where is the best pipe. I would get into big trouble if I mentioned one.
Well,
You'd
let's
be
do.
getting barred from bars.
Is that a political answer?
Do you have a tap in your house that whenever you pull it, Guinness just comes out? Do you have a
I
lifelong
refuse
supply?
to answer that question.
That's his bathtub. No, but a lot. I mean, there's always the question. And
Yes, I have a bar in the house, but
there was always the question that Guinness never travels well. And I always used, I mean, one of the best pints of Guinness that I've ever had was in Malaysia,
Well,
in a pub in Malaysia. But as you say, it's from the keg to the top. And it's hard cared for.
absolutely.
So when I used to always say to people, it's not that Guinness doesn't travel well. You can have Guinness in Singapore, Hong Kong, New York. It doesn't travel well from the keg to the top if it's not looked after. If it's looked after, you will get an amazing pint. Especially, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, if you go to a house that sells a lot of Guinness, so the Guinness is running.
Yes.
If you go to a bar that sells a pint every 3 hours, you're not going to get a good pint of Guinness.
Absolutely.
You know?
And Matthew, there used to be a thing that sort of, you know, we tried to control in terms of the company tried to control.
The royal
it
we.
was like sort of if it didn't turn over a certain or a certain quantity on a weekly basis, we had to go and make the hard call and saying, sorry, we're going to remove this tap because it was as critical to that. If you wanted consistency that you have today, you needed to take control of it rather than.
yeah. There's also probably an element of repetition in there from a bar staffing perspective.
Oh, it is.
You know, like someone who's pouring 3 pints a day versus
Yeah.
80 pints a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, totally. Like, I can still remember getting into the likes of Kelly Cellars, and there was, just as you saying that, there would have been somebody just constantly pouring Guinness.
Totally.
And then settling.
Yeah.
And I know when I was in Whites, we always had a keg underneath the counter,
Yes.
and it was for the
That's-
regular
yeah.
punters that come in. They were happy enough. It takes a wee bit longer to settle, but you were getting a
As fresh as a fresh thing.
yeah, and it was just fresh from the keg.
Yeah.
And that keg, that keg wouldn't have went into a second day. You know, so it was fresh every time
Wow.
it was tapped.
That's interesting. I think my favourite pint of Guinness I've ever had, I feel like I'll about to be shot for saying this, but you said Malaysia, so I'm all good.
Yeah.
London Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I was in Rwanda for 3 months, and I hadn't had a lick or a taste or a sound of home for the whole 3 months. And I remember waiting for my flight back to Belfast. I remember going into the wee bar, having a pint of Guinness, and just having it felt like crying into the glass, because it just took me straight back.
Yeah.
And even looking at it, I was like mesmerized by it. I was like, it almost looks purple. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, actually, if you study it in depth, it has it's a good word actually. Purple, sort of, it cloaks up. It's not black.
Yeah, it's more like a ruby red almost. Yeah.
That's the word, Jerry.
Oh, ruby red.
Yeah.
I like that.
Ruby
Rolled
red.
up nice, ruby
Yeah,
red.
yeah.
Very rich ruby red.
Wow.
There you go.
How many pints do you reckon you served in your
Over the years,
Quick maths.
I would. Would you be talking kegs and? I mean,
Oh yeah.
but it was. I mean,
How many pints do you
I
get out
must
of a
admit,
keg?
and I have to say this.
88.
I mean,
88.
I always took great pride in pouring a pint of Guinness and
Thank you.
giving it the time to settle, and I think that showed
Yeah.
whenever you were serving it. If you take like anything that you do, I think if you take pride in the job that you do.
And you're observed,
The
by the
end
way,
result-
Jerry.
exactly.
Because,
Oh, yeah.
if you look at the Guinness community, have their own sort of, shall we say, website, and they sort of post up various, what results are.
Exactly,
And they
yeah.
take a lot of pride in that.
What was it about hospitality that drew you in?
God.
Because you obviously thrived in that, but if you think back,
Yeah.
what was it that kind of was the magnet?
I suppose my career, from school, for what it was, from Larkfield Secondary School, leave at 15, get a job in the BBC as a gopher, and then
What does that mean? You're just running stuff?
yeah, I mean in those days, if there was an outside broadcast, in a sense, an outside recording, there's a great guy, great cameraman called Cyril Cave, and I had to accompany him and literally get that reel back into the studio, or actually to the editors, for them to edit whatever they were covering, whatever that subject was, and it had to be on the desk of the editor by something like 4 o'clock. So
Class.
it was a sort of morning recording. The reel, it was stuck in my hands, and it was like buses or trains or whatever.
Yeah.
So that kind of job, and then the other jobs were just running in between the departments,
And if
Yeah,
that
it's
had
brilliant.
if that had worked out, you could have been the Eamon Holmes.
Jerry, funny you should say that. Yeah, there was an offer of a scene man, to get on the
Yeah.
studio floor, but I screwed that up. So I'll not say any more than that. And then sort of a job at Ford with J.E. Coulter's in Chester Street. But I always had part-time jobs in bars, Matthew.
Nice.
I don't know why, other than maybe I like making money. And that started, from, God, now we're going back now here.
That's okay, let's go back. I like going back.
And that, it did. I mean, there was a place called, Just Gerry's, the Pound. It all started from the Farmer's Rest up in East Belfast. A guy called Arnie Knowles, who ran the Marquee Club, it wasn't Hill Street at the time. What was the one just round from the Herc? It was down in Avenue. Can't remember. So I always had part-time jobs in bars, even though I had maybe a day job. And so it all started with me. I love this hospitality industry. It's just it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it grew from there. It really grew from there. So to the point when I was doing various part-time jobs, from milkman to mobile DJs and so on. David Donnelly, I don't know if that name means anything to you. Yeah, he was a rep at Scottish Newcastle Breweries, and he phones me one day, and I don't know where I was, but he says, "Terry, there's a guy leaving, and I think you might be in with a chance." Went down, Scottish Newcastle interview with the actually managing director, and he turned out to be Ian McKinley of McKinley's Whiskey, like vast estates in Scotland and all the rest of it. And he said, "All right, Loughins." He said, "Yeah, I think you could do the job for us." Now, I was a long-haired freak at the time doing GJ. And I went, "Oh, okay, right." He said, "But you need to see the sales manager." And that was a guy called Peter someone, can't remember. And gave me the job, and it started from there. From Scottish Newcastle, 13 years in sales.
It was a long time.
It was.
For like getting into it, that was a different sort of scenario.
Different scenario. It's all bottled beer then too, Jerry. You know, you get up East Belfast and all those bars along, you know, New Nards Road, and you were getting 100 cases of this and 200 cases of that Monk, wee Willie Brown and all the rest of it.
And in fairness, you must have been very good at your job, because at that time, those would have been all tied houses.
They were.
Like that would have been it either been Croft Inns or a Bass
correct.
House. And
So what's a tied house?
Well, a tied house that you would have, like I can remember, the Bass Houses always had red doors. So if it had a red door, the pub was a Bass House.
Right.
And it meant that you could only, on your pumps, you could only have their products.
Wow.
You could put certain stuff in the fridges, but the pumps, because basically what they were doing, they would subsidise what you were buying from them and just make you offers that you couldn't refuse, really.
Do you want a carpet in the lounge?
Yeah, exactly. If you were doing refurbishment, or
you really couldn't refuse it.
If you wanted a TV, or you know,
it still goes on today, Jerry.
Yeah, not to the same extent,
but there was a big swathe of that throughout Belfast, where you a Bass House, were you a Guinness House, and that was down to, as it increased, and the money being, shall we say, lent, if you want to put it that way, had consequences about what you could sell.
Yeah,
it divides an awful lot of people in their opinions of what it does to the trade.
Yeah.
But that tied house system ran for quite a while. Yeah. It's certainly not the same anymore.
Interesting.
Or is it?
I think, no, certainly not. I mean, it's opened up a lot more, and I think, because I remember having discussions with like the Guinness guys when I was in the Europe, because the Europe was well known. I mean, we had at one point, I think, 18 different pumps in the bar.
Yeah.
Now, with all the full range of Guinness, and I have to say Guinness were extremely supportive, but it was always in the sort of the idea of the hood that we would have a choice of local craft beers from Germany, beers from America, beers from around the world.
Yeah.
And that brought people in.
It did.
Because like, when I remember when it was the Bass and Croft Inns, and that, it was, you knew, when you walked into a Bass House, you knew it was going to be on the counter. There was no surprises.
Yeah.
When you went into the Croft Inns bar, you knew it was going to be on the counter.
Interesting.
So there was never any surprises.
Yeah.
Where now you go in and we have choices of beers from all around the world.
Which is brilliant. And even local. And you think now, down at Yardsman or, White House or,
Maggie's Elite.
Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. It has been for the better.
Yeah.
It has. Although I worked for one of those large companies that had that influence and could, shall we say, finance the demands of, people that wanted it. It was kind of uncomfortable at times that it locked some of them down, and didn't give them the opportunity to buy into the local guys who were really doing the best they could, but finding it very difficult to get into what I would call a locked house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was your milk route?
Lisford.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
You've always had very public-facing jobs.
I suppose.
When you worked at Ford, was it sales or what were you doing at Ford?
Sales.
Sales, yeah.
That was trainee sales, which is just cheap labour.
What do you think? Is there a connection between hospitality and sales?
Oh yes.
Tell me about it.
Oh yeah. Really, it is the face. It's the face and the personality. Anyone that is a reasonable personality and empathy with the person at the other side that you're with, that makes it. Yeah. If you understand each other, even in the most heated situations, and I went through some heated situation, but if you understood why he was as angry as he was, then you could actually do something about it. You could sort of say,
Very
look,
well put,
yeah.
It's the art of communication, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, Jerry.
Because I must admit, like in my times in bars, and touch wood, I don't think I've actually ever barred anyone. Because there's no point barring anybody. You always just say, look, it's best you go now. Come back tomorrow and we'll talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
And then that diffuses the whole situation and that.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's that art of knowing what way to to control the situation
Yes.
or what way a conversation should go. And it's the art of communication between two people. And that goes across whether it's sales or hospitality. It's to do
It's
with
in any negotiation.
any workplace or industry where you are face to face with someone. What you think today will lose quite a bit.
I was
because
just about to go there. Yeah.
It's all call centres and it's all.
Yes.
There's no actual face to face.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally.
One of the things I love about producer Rosca over here is he used to have a part-time job in a shop, right? When he was maybe 16.
Good on you.
End of last year.
Yeah. So I was a busboy when I was 16.
Yes.
Now, I love that. I think everybody should work should be a busboy at some point in their life.
You see,
the skills,
sorry, Matthew,
unbelievable.
I cut across you and say that the hospitality industry, for what I'm just going to get on to, it gives you worldwide opportunities. I mean, if you think of the people that sort of that have started from bar people, McKeever, Eugene McKeever, bar person in what you call Corse Corner. Owns now, 4 or 5 hotels? And he gives anybody an opportunity to better themselves. He'll start them, whatever they want. Do you want to work in the kitchen? Do you want to? And they grow, and they grow, and they grow, and it's all over. I mean, even the Hastings Hotel Group, a massive, massive hotel chain, but they will give anybody an opportunity.
Yeah.
And if you think sort of like it's all right, it's all long hours and no money, it's tough at the start. Of course it is. It's always tough to start with, even, in the shop, I'm sure. But I'm saying that sort of once you literally stick by it, it'll send you anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
Better than I know some engineering companies and whatever companies. Hospitality gives you an opportunity to the world.
And it's interesting, like, I talk with a lot of people from here who live overseas.
Yes.
And there's this common understanding that if you're from, whether it's Northern Ireland or the Republic,
yes,
you have a superpower that very few people in the world have. And it's the ability to connect with anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, now maybe I'm nearly 30. I'm getting really old now, okay? I'm really getting on in years. I might just be being a grumpy old man here.
If he starts talking about the age, Gerry, I'm out of here.
But maybe it's just because you become a bit cynical or whatever, but I'm not sure if as many people have that. I'm talking about younger generations, the ability to talk to anybody. Yeah. And I have a theory, this is totally just barstool theory.
Why?
That people aren't working in hospitality the way they used to. They're not getting those jobs when they're 15, 16. They're holding off a little bit longer, and they're actually losing that interfacing with the general public that's really, really hard, but shapes you in a good way.
Do you think, Matthew, it's because they don't want to, or they're not getting the opportunity to?
It's funny, we were chatting to another guy in here called Mark just before you guys came. He works here. He also makes podcasts. A really great guy. And we were saying that we think the way education's kind of gone, used to be you could have left school at 16, no bother. And now, then a culture kind of came, well, to get opportunities, you really need to stay and do your A-levels. And then it went a step further. It was like, well, if you want the best opportunities, you should really go to university. And then it's, well, a bachelor's degree, that's nothing. You need to go and get a master's. And then it's like, oh, your master's is nothing. Where's your PhD? And everything's kind of just got extended out and out and out and out and out. And the priority has been on, we've put so much emphasis on academic education that I think everything else has fallen to the side to our detriment. And I'm really excited. There's an amazing company in here I'd love to tell you about after this called Work Plus. And their whole thing is getting apprenticeships up and running for people who are 16, 17, 18, people who want a career change at 30, and actually giving people that opportunity that doesn't involve a 30 grand in debt university degree. He's saying amen over here.
Fair play to Rosca that he keeps that second job because, he obviously gets him something, in terms of like communication. I enjoy it. I love it. That's what I'm saying is that sort of you don't need to run through that university career. I started working, as you say, with the BBC at 15. The brilliant opportunity. But how many people, when they go into the hospitality industry, either because they want to earn a few quid, and they have this attitude which is like, oh, this is only like,
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not. It is the start of something.
Yeah.
If you're determined enough to sort of say, right, I can see something in myself here. I can, there's Colin Neal up at the Hospitality Ulster. They run courses now. Gerry, am I right in saying that, encouraging people, to get into it, and a career path that can take you anywhere. And something, you don't have to spend your life trying to pay off a university debt.
Yeah.
Sorry to the universities, but no. Hospitality can take you anywhere you want to be and who you want to be. Whether it's working for a drinks company, whether it's just working for a hotel organisation, way to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the good thing as well, as you were saying about Hospitality Ulster, but also the likes of chefs like Michael Dean and Alan McGrath, they're starting to get new, because nobody wants to be a chef anymore. But I think when you were talking about, what is the reason that people don't sort of have that? And I think it actually goes back much further than that, because there's something in that knows kids don't go out and play anymore the way they used to. So there's none of that interaction. When kids come home from school, they're on an iPad or a computer.
Oh, now we're preaching.
And they're talking the mates I've got 3,000 mates. You don't have any mates. You've got 3,000 people that you speak to online that you have no clue about. And like when I was a kid, we went out and we fell and we got knocked up to the eyeballs and you fell from trees and
thank you.
And you were mixing with other kids.
Yeah.
And then when you went to work, you already had the foundation of being able to communicate with another human being.
Yeah.
That's being eroded. Then a lot of them, when they go to work, they're going to call centres, where again, they're sitting in front of a screen.
Yeah, it's boxed off.
And that would need to do something to get people back into, I think, and it's starting from too much of an early age where we're being withdrawn from communicating with each other.
That's really interesting.
It is, because, you're talking right about the playground.
Yeah.
And the playground, when I grew up in Stockmans Lane, I mean, was, it was classed as being out in the country. But, sort of West Belfast.
Was it really?
Oh, it
No
was.
way.
Absolutely. Stockmans Lane.
Oh, Terry, stop it.
Honestly,
No
Matthew,
way.
If you drive up Stockmans Lane
was
today,
considered
if
the
you look to
countryside.
if you look to your right, you can see what used to be. And then when you go into the sort of big roundabout for the motorway roundabout as it was, actually, before you go up Kennedy Way, on the left-hand side, you'll see like an opening.
Okay.
That was the rest of Stockmans Lane, and that's where I was born.
Class.
And, the roundabout, which is Kennedy Way roundabout, where there's, what is it up there, Sainsbury's and Asda and all the rest
Kennedy
of it.
Centre and all that,
That was my primary school, that
Wow.
roundabout. Yeah. And that really was out in the sticks.
That's madness.
Well, it's funny now you saying it, because I remember
Here we go.
Here we go.
when we moved up, and the furthest the bus went,
Casement
there
Park.
was a roundabout on,
Sorry,
Casement Park.
I'm sorry,
on the-
Jerry. I'm preceding you because
No,
it was
yeah.
a tram turn
There
round.
was a tram at Casement, and then on the Glen Road. it
You
only
said
went-
too much, Terence.
It only went as far as St Teresa's, and there was a roundabout there because there was no houses after.
No.
That's crazy.
It was all farms and wee
I mean,
country houses.
between us and the Donegal Road was a bog,
yeah,
which the motorway is now, but it was a bog.
that was the Bog Meadows, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was living in Donegal Road, like I shared before we were on, I remember walking down. Is that the park centre there? Yeah, it is, just where Balls and Falls is.
Yeah.
And stumbling into this bog, and there was goats, and there was geese, and I was like, what on earth is this place? And it was only when I was chatting to May Blood, God rest her.
Oh,
She was saying that,
wonderful.
that whole area was just all, there was no
bog.
motorway,
Yeah,
no
there was
nothing.
the only thing there, was between the bog and the Falls Road was the graveyard.
Yeah.
That was it. Oh, sorry, and the sewerage works were between it and Stockmans Lane.
But then the funny thing again is, and as we've said, there was very little left at the bus when you went that far.
That's right.
But back then, I mean, where Sainsbury's is now, that was a Lucasade factory. You went on up the road a bit, and you had, it would have been Caffrey's
Yeah.
then it became Boss Ireland.
Yes.
So there was a lot of industry.
Mad.
There was.
Oh, that's all gone.
Yeah. In fact, where you see, Asda today and Sainsbury's today used to be Eastwood Metals.
That's right, yeah. The big
Eastwood
scrapyard.
Metals, yeah.
And you'll remember this, they had a big crane
They did.
with a magnet on it, and at the end of the magnet was a double-decker bus that just used to hang.
Matthew used to hang it. Just
I think you guys
early
you've had a
marketing.
phone call before this, right? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in. We're going to sell this guy up the river.
That was just you saying about Eastwood Scrapyard. And for some reason, and am I correct, or maybe I am just a modest, but I think they didn't light the bus up at Christmas.
Yes.
It lit up at Christmas.
Yes.
It had Christmas lights on it.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was just on this big round magnet, and it was a double bag that hung there for years. I don't think the magnet was ever
Jerry, I
used.
used to play in the yard and get,
Did you go say you played
In the bus, he used to go up, have a few cans with the boys.
get chased out of it.
Just you
Stop it,
saying
Matthew. We've got to get back to the reality.
Phenomenal. But I think Terry made a really interesting point. So there is a real movement, I would say, like older than 16. So if you want to say millennial or slightly younger than millennial, of people trying to get away from screens. People are switching to phones like this now. People are throwing away their TVs in their house. They're coming off social media, and they're looking for jobs that doesn't involve them sitting down 8 hours a day plus on a laptop. People are turning to
Seriously?
like organic farming, and they're picking apples, and they want to work in coffee shops because they're so they're checking out of the corporate world. You see it with even things like bicycle messengers. Bicycle messengers are like what Roman gods were to the Romans now. You know what I mean? They're valorized because they're like, these guys. They quit their job in the law firm. They're working on the bike. They're out in nature, and it just hit me. Hospitality is an amazing offering for people who don't want to sit at a desk.
And I think, as Terry said as well, not just is it a brilliant job for learning social skills and everything else, but the opportunities that it gives you to travel. I mean, the likes of, like, as Terry said, Tastings hotels, just for an example, but any good hotel group, if you went to another hotel, and they all have their connections, because they're all in different hotel groups, and you wanted to move to New York, I would say chances are that you'll be able to at least be able to put in contact with somebody. If you're good at your job, they'll nearly be fighting over you.
Janice Gold at the Hotel Federation, and she coordinates.
That's right, yeah.
All of that sort of hotel, shall we say, what's the web? You just have to ring her up.
Yeah,
she is the most accommodating person I know, who will sort of say, "I tell you who you should talk to," and she'll put you straight in front of either Eugene McKeever, or one of the Hastings family, or any of the hotel groups, and saying, "Look, have a chat with them because they have connections too."
Yeah.
Where's
Where's the kind of two prongs? Where's the most unusual place your job took you, and maybe the most exciting?
Oh God. Oof. Unusual. Probably no, nothing unusual. They're mostly, Matthew, around sort of big events. In Europe, it would have been the likes of the Ryder Cup down at Soda Grande, or Paris for rugby, or Rome for rugby, taking a group from here to that. Oddest, probably in Ireland. and I went to a sponsorship that wasn't, one of my own, but because I played an all Ireland route, or an all Ireland game with all the sponsorships. There was one which was, I'm trying to remember the name. It was down on the west coast, and it was something to do with, shall we say, mating, if you want to put it that crudely. It was something. It was like boys and girls who were single and, out in the
Listen, Varn, is it?
That's the very
Listen,
one.
Varn,
Thank
yes.
you.
Look at that.
How did I know that?
Look at that. Whenever you said the word mating, I was like, hang on a second. He didn't say mating. He said something else, and Jerry's like, I know the very place.
I always remember.
Listen, Varna.
Christy Moore had done a famous song
Christy
about Listen,
Moore.
Varna, and all that, there's a name, the marriage makers, or there's a name, and they all meet there. So you basically go and you
Looking for
It's like an open market.
Oh, totally.
Wow.
But it's for all the people who really work in rural farms.
Right.
So their neighbour might be 10 miles down the road, and they used to go to this. It's a big festival every year.
That's
I think it's still
phenomenal.
going.
Here, you make a note of that, Rosca. We'll
Guinness-
bring you there over the summer.
And Guinness were one of the sponsors.
You will go a boy and come back a man.
Get yourself a good country woman.
I think that probably classifies as one of the most unusual.
would be,
Yeah, I'd
imagine
say
it would
The
be.
biggest
Yeah.
ones are
Matchmakers, they're just called matchmakers. So
Yeah.
you go, and there's these professional matchmakers,
Class.
and you go and basically they'll get you
Yeah.
lined up and
I never knew that took place here. When I lived in Manhattan for 3 years, and in there you meet every job you can imagine, you meet it there, as you can imagine. And we met a few professional matchmakers, and I was like, "You're pulling my leg." And they're like, "You see, ever seen that movie Hitch, the Will Smith movie?"
yes.
I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Yeah, that's my job." And you're like, "Phenomenal." Liz, no, what?
in Manhattan. Did
Yeah,
you say?
Yeah. Yeah. Here it's a big market though, because you're not
It's
you're not talking about Irish farmers. You're talking about Wall Street hedge funds managers that are so busy and disconnected from the real world that would happily pay somebody stupid money to
put
find
them together.
Yeah, find someone
Yeah.
decent. So yeah, funny world.
And I'm guessing that you would have met quite a few celebrities, but the big events at these sponsored events. So
Look at
You
him
al- you
fishing.
always
He's
say-
just going like this.
no, oh God, no, but they always say never meet your hero. So did that ever? Was there anybody that you went, oh my God, and then you meet them and you go, what the?
No, in terms of heroes, no, not in the music business, which I love. I love music. We would maybe have level 42 at the Ulster Hall, or maybe at the arena there would be Mark Knopfler, playing with Dire Straits, but no, I never actually got to meet. I only, I'm got to say it, was I met was Mr. Morrison.
Nice. Found the man.
And the man,
I'm sorry, but he literally doesn't like
people
to
he
talk
doesn't
to
like- no, he
people
doesn't,
at
he
all.
doesn't.
And we were just in the same room, and it was like, how quickly can I get out of here? And I understand. I mean, he is what he is, and absolute genius. But
And he still
when it
goes
comes
for
to
his wee afternoon tea in the Culloden every other day.
Class.
tell me, Gerry, I was Ian Sands. One of the things we started was the Blues in the Bay down in Warren Point, Warren Point, and Ian, because of how good he is and what he does, attracted the likes of Van because he loved that small, intimate concert venue that it created, and he loved it down there. Loved it down there. Came back twice, 3 times. In fact, of the sponsorships that were created out of, from what the Guinness involvement was, the Blues in the Bay is still going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Jazz Festival's huge for
Oh
Guinness,
yeah.
isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the Cork Jazz Festival
Yeah.
would be the biggest
yeah.
one, wouldn't it?
Massive. Wasn't a great fan of jazz, by the way.
What are you into? Because I know you're into music.
Oh, God. The DJing days were was late 60s, early 70s.
What were you disc jockeying back then?
Yeah, I was various, because it was a mobile disc. Was the start of that stuff. I ended up in Kelly's in Portrush with James
Nice.
Kelly, and we did a residency there.
Oh my goodness.
And did you have a name? Like were you DJ
Oh,
T?
stop it! Don't.
Oh, he
You
does?
know, right?
He does?
No, but don't. I'd be honest.
Oh,
Till I
come
seen
on.
him, I had no idea.
Oh, come on! I'm going to kill myself here. Sweetie T.
Sweetie T. Nice.
There's very few people know that until now.
Yeah, everybody knows it now. Sweetie T.
I don't know where that came from.
Was
Yes,
it like Sweeney Todd, T for Todd? And,
no.
T for Terence.
well, let's go on DJ.
No, I think I just had it. I think I'm suddenly sort of saying, he's a hell of a sweet tooth. I mean, he eats chocolate instead of drinking pints and, or, I don't know. Anyway,
Very good.
back in
That's
those
class.
days, I mean,
Kelly's, that's a big gig.
it was. It was a
Because
hell of a
it
gig.
used to be buses went from like
Oh,
everywhere.
well, that was after me. I mean, sorry. I mean, yes, it was popular. It was very, very popular. But I mean, what it became and what James Kelly did to that place was awesome.
But I mean, once the Sweetie T was playing, like, you had to get up.
All the buses were leaving.
TransLink had to commission a whole new fleet.
No offence to the Kelly family, but I mean, you know, sometimes you ended up sleeping in a bath because you know you had to stay overnight. It was so late when you finished.
Absolutely,
and you know the rooms were, well, shall we say,
oh, well, I certainly imagine
you couldn't
That's
find
part of the lifestyle you bought into, though, isn't it?
Oh.
You've got the stories to tell.
Oh, absolutely.
Ice hockey. Playing ice hockey in the 60s. That is ahead of the curve.
That,
no, didn't know that.
How crazy is that?
King's Hall, today, obviously, a whole change of face. But that was the ice rink. It was owned by a guy called Trevor Kane. And there was another guy, George somebody or other, that they owned it together. And I lived in Stockmans Lane. And when they opened up the ice rink, it was like a magnet. You know, it was just a place to go. You know, in the 60s, 70s, it was like sort of, you know, not a lot about, you know, in terms of how to entertain yourself. I actually remember one particular very, very bold winter, and we skated down the path or the pavement of Stockmans Lane.
Class.
Ruined my boots, by the way.
That is epic.
And then the ice hockey thing started up, and there was a league. There was the Wings, the Red Wings, Belfast Racers, various other teams, and I started playing ice hockey.
Amazing.
And two league championships.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now, isn't every day a school?
That's why I do this job. Honestly, if you had told me, was there ice hockey in Northern Ireland in the 60s, I would have said no. I had no idea. I honestly thought that Belfast Giants was when it started. I'm dead wrong.
I mean, I was aware of the ice rink, but I thought it was just a commercial ice rink.
And it was mostly, but I mean,
But I didn't know about the
I mean, sort of 2 nights a week there was training, and then a game on a Friday night.
So was it all? Were you playing all Ireland teams, or
no? It was only Northern Ireland, you know, and it was all Belfast centric. Really,
Class.
you know, it was taken from a lot of people that lived on the periphery of Belfast Central.
Brilliant.
And would you still go to games now, Terry, down at the...
No, honestly. Yeah. And to be honest, Jerry, when one of the options I had was of 2 corporate boxes at the to look after at the arena. And at the early days, I had sort of like 12 cedar boxes, 2 of them, and to try and fill them with, you know, hospitality people sort of saying, would you like to come along on my behalf? And so it was very difficult to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, it's bloody massive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a mate works for, what's that big pharma company, Almac. And they have like a lottery system to put your name in just for the running to get a seat into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'd actually going back to the concerts, you know, again, I was Mr. Trade trade relations thing, and again 2 boxes to fill, and we had Rod Stewart, and you would had Lionel Richie, you name all the group. I had no offence to some public, but I get phone calls sort of like, you know, the last minute saying, sorry Terry, I can't make it tonight. And I'm going,
it's Lionel Richie.
They were taking it because it was a free ticket, and rather than and then at the end of forgetting.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
so I made a lot of good friends because it was last minute sort of fills.
Yeah, love that.
Listen, I've got a couple of tickets for Lionel Richie tonight. Would you? Oh God!
And then the corporate box as well.
Do you know something? Anybody now listening, you know, from Diageo? Oh, sorry, they weren't all hospitality trained. Anyway,
what's your miraculous escape story?
Oh God. That was something else. DJing, we talked about earlier, and milkman.
Right.
New Year's Eve, and the trouble you had New Year's Eve in doing a milk round was that you sort of went out in your morning shift, and then you had to do your evening shift on a Friday, as it fell then, I think, or was it Saturday, to collect the money for the week. So, you know, you're out twice. Instead of finishing maybe sort of at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then falling asleep, you know, I had to go back out again with a saddlebag and sort of saying, "Excuse me, you owe me," And my better half actually used to sit and help me do that.
Class.
She used to sit in the milk crate on the left-hand side and sort of, you go up there and it's £4, blah, 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 blah. So we went from that to getting home, and I was doing a gig at the Wellington Park Hotel.
Yeah.
And I don't know what time it finished that, Matthew, but it was certainly 12 o'clock. She lived in East Belfast, and I had the MGB, which I'd always promised myself I would buy. That's a whole different story. And drove her home. I think we probably got home to her house about 1 o'clock. And then I'm heading back to Lisburn. Fell asleep at the wheel. Remember the cycle path that used to be on the left-hand side of the Sydney bypass? Mm-hmm. There's a curb and a cycle path sort of protected. Well, the MG just hit that at whatever speed I was when I was asleep. Hit that, took off at about 6 feet, and hit a lamppost, electricity lamppost, if I remember rightly. Yes, I got a bill for. Oh well, sorry. Anyway, split the car in half.
Yo.
From the passenger side, Lindsay had been there dead.
Oh God.
Piled itself into the railway. You think of D Street Bridge, Matthew, if you know D Street into the...
I do, yeah.
Yeah. In there, and like sort of come around and sort of gaga. But I got out of that car, made it to the central reservation, which was just a grass bank, and fell against the grass bank. What the hell? Two guys that run across the road, and they're looking all over. They're looking on the railway line. They're looking all the way. I'm saying, I'm over here. Walked out of that, got into the entrance gate or whatever to the yard. They phoned police and phoned my dad. He came but saw the car before he saw me, and couldn't believe it. In fact, that I was still alive, and that made the front pages of the Belfast Telegraph the following day.
Wow.
Miracle escape.
Incredible.
Do you know what I walked out with? A broken finger.
Wow.
There's an add-on to that because the Ulster Motor Show started up then, and the police traffic branch took over the Threepenny bit and put up big various screens about, don't drink and drive and don't do this. And there, it's probably the size of that wall, was the MG, crashed and all, And I walked in with friends, and we stood and looked at this thing. And the guy standing and looking after the stand, he said, took him home in a bucket. I said, no, they didn't. I was the guy that walked out of that and only had a broken. He literally shoved me off the stage.
Wow.
That's not what the one here.
That's not the message we want to hear.
Stay on message.
Sorry, Matt, you did ask.
Phenomenal.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
Luckiest escape, I think.
Are you changed after something like that? Did it change your life? Because here's the thing, something like that happens. 2 weeks, you're like whoa, and then you kind of get back to normal life. Was there any kind of permanent thing that you took away from that?
I was probably young and foolish enough not to take in what it really meant that I actually had got away from. Because I got so many speeding fines after that isn't true.
Didn't know that whatsoever.
Cut that out, Rosca.
Go back then, just that wee bit there. I'm interested. Like you say, you always wanted to buy, the MGB, and you finally did. What does that mean? Did you have it? I see. There's a Northern Irish thing in myself where you don't like to get yourself nice things, or you feel like you shouldn't. Was there any of that?
There is a bit of that, but then it was always about motoring, and I have a desire to sort of, enjoy myself. I sat as a navigator in rallying for a guy called, in fact, Marty Moore, who was my best friend from days of school, and we went rallying. So it was always a motorsport interest, so hence the interest in motor cars, which I've always had. So I always, looked at this, that and the other and what I wanted and so on. Did I take any consideration of the safety of it in the early times? Probably not. Or hence, wouldn't have, got caught into various, shall we say, speeding. Yeah. Which I, put my hand up. I was stupid about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Cool.
And then after, did you rush out and get another MG after the?
No.
Yes, no.
No. That was, Jerry, one of those situations where, look, it's gone. I'm lucky to come out of that. Just get on with life. I mean, in those days, there was so much going on, Jerry. I mean, this was like sort of, before the Troubles. Mm-hmm. And the opportunities in Belfast. And Belfast had a buzz about it that you wouldn't believe. Yeah. It was superb. I was in the Pint, the Pint Club. Yeah. Just Gerry's. When Tito's was running as a cabaret lounge. The opportunities were all over the place. I was in Arnie's bar with just below the Abercorn. Yeah. And God, the nights we used to have. So there was a whole plethora of opportunities to do something in hospitality. Yeah. And it always fascinated me. Always.
What's your viewpoint of Belfast now? Right, so Troubles happens, 25 years Good Friday Agreement. Yeah. Out the back of COVID. Yeah. How do you feel looking out at the landscape now?
Something, you can take two views. You can either say, I've never seen it so bad in terms of trying to exist for those guys that are out there and facing it. But they still have the spirit. I'm always surprised at the potential that some individuals and groups bring to reinvest. And I'm saying, why would you reinvest at this stage? Yeah. And they just have that drive to say, look, I'm sorry, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Mark Byrne in the Clover Group. Yeah. I mean, he's now sort of investing in around the Cathedral Quarter, strangely enough.
And he's just bought the egg as well, and they're going. It's funny.
Did he buy the egg? Did he?
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention Mark Byrne because the Clover Group and a lot of other hospitalities, particularly in the Belfast city centre, during the lockdowns of COVID, they reinvested in their businesses. They used the opportunity when it was quiet to redecorate, to refurbish, and you're going, what? Every other business was moaning, going, no, I can't. Okay, everybody was getting hard up, but never put down on it. But the hospitality industry, without any doubt, used that quiet time, as it were, when they had no choice. Yeah. And they went, you know what, see, when we reopen, we're going to reopen better. Wow. Yeah. And there's very few businesses have that absolutely buzz and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And
Willie Jack,
Willie Jack, just unbelievable. Oh my God, Willie Jack's just a force to himself.
Yes.
I mean, it's totally.
He's a category of his own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even, you think of Pedro in the Sunflower, and he moves into an American bar, literally, and where that is, on the extreme, on the edge of, and what does he do? He turns it into a super venue.
It's one of the busiest.
Saturday night Saturday you couldn't get into.
Played music, and it's just a proper pub again.
Yeah.
And you're right, like geographically, it makes no sense. That's up at the edge of Sailortown, isn't it? Like you're like, class, unbelievable.
And, trying to get a smile out of him is hard.
It's funny you said something earlier about people in hospitality, and I have known Pedro. Oh my God, I've known Pedro more years than I care to remember. Yeah. And
where'd you first meet Jerry?
I first, believe it or not,
Road?
I used to do a magazine called Pure Folk Magazine.
Oh, I didn't know this. If I came up.
I used to then, with doing the magazines, we then went to do bands. And that sort of grew. Because when we were doing the magazines, bands went, well, you do that magazine? And I went, yeah. Do you do posters? And we were saying, no, but Jimmy does it. And then after a while, me and the mate that was doing it, why are we sending them to Jimmy? We'll do it. Yeah. So we started, and Ledgy was going at the time.
All right, okay.
And we got a grant from Ledgy, which my ma tried to take. You sure that's for you, son?
What are you doing in my post?
Who would send you £2,000? So she tried to put to our credit union. I went, Mum, you can't do that. So the crew and then we started doing bands. Like we had put on moving. It was mostly folk bands, like some Moving Hearts, Christy Moore, and then I think Eamon McCann got a wee bit, you were stepping on my toes a wee bit too much and made it a wee bit difficult for us to get bands. Yeah. But I mean, I had a good 4 or 5 years at And because it was a small business, we decided we would call it Leprechaun Promotions.
Yeah.
Because leprechauns are small, and it was a small business. That was my train of thought, which I thought was a brilliant idea. Till you ring up people. Like we're ringing up, we're going to get a new company car.
I did all, mate.
Up, and you were going, it's Gerry here. I was speaking to one of your reps earlier, and where are you calling from? And I would go, Leprechaun Promotions. I did on. And I mean, we had an office.
So how did that lead to Pedro?
So when we were doing the bands in the magazine, I had got a letter from someone who subscribed to the magazine, who turned out to be Pedro Donald. But I didn't realise many years later, Pedro would have been, well, he started off, I think, the King's Head.
He did.
And then he joined the Croft Inns. And,
Yes.
And then he was moved. I was a big fan of Queen's Arcade Bar.
Yeah.
And I was a really close friend to Kathy Toner and Diane. They were the really brilliant friends of mine, still are. Haven't seen Kathy in a while, but would still see Diane. So I would, and then there was the Budgate, the Budweiser Gate, which happened in, what's the bar? Across from Europa.
And Budgate as in like Watergate, like a crisis? Or like an
No,
actual
no,
physical
no,
gate
no,
that you would open?
It was just, no, it was,
Brunswick Street around, was it not?
no, the one just facing Europa. The big bar, it's still there.
Oh, Robinson's.
Robinson's.
Sorry, oh yeah.
So it was just keg. Bud was never on draft.
Right.
And there was a lot of kegs left, which they couldn't sell. So I think it was just something that was used as a staff incentive. With agreement, it has to be said with agreement, and then there was a miscommunication or something. So it was just called Budgate.
Right, great.
So I don't know if that should be heard. Well, so long ago. Anyway, so Pedro was then moved to Queens. He was in Queens for a while.
Yeah.
And then I got to know Pedro very well then. And as you said, I mean, he's not known for his smile, but the man would do anything for you. And the amount of people in hospitality that he's helped. The festivals, there's a lot of festivals in Belfast wouldn't happen if it wasn't for Pedro. And just his support for live music, for the arts, unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
He went through some rough times.
Yes.
Jeez, he did.
And I mean, he looked during the COVID, totally looked after all his staff
Wow.
in both bars.
Both bars.
And still has the same staff before the lockdowns where he does now.
Yeah.
So Matthew, I mean, it's those kind of people that are still there today in Belfast and still prepared, to drive it. I just admire them.
Yeah.
I really do. They have probably, the vision that sort of nobody else would have, saying, we will get through this. And anybody, in the financial side of things, in terms of overheads from tax and rates and all the rest of it, you're just literally dumping it on them.
Yeah.
And without any release whatsoever.
Yeah.
God, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
I really don't. I really don't. Fair play to them.
Couple of stock questions just to wrap up.
Yeah.
We ask these to every single person. Probably ask them to you like twice. Some serious, some silly, some all over the place.
No worries.
First one, outside of the miracle escape moment, tell us about the most challenging moment that you've faced and how you're able to overcome it.
That's a tough one. The first, well,
We like gut feelings because
Yeah,
it's
I
hard.
know,
It's hard to
I-
get it exact, you know.
Yeah. I remember the emotion of working up in Ballymena depot of Guinness Northern Ireland as it was then, and getting a call from the dispatch office, and there's a guy down there as a transport manager who'd been there for years and years, and he said, "Terry, Mr. Lavery's looking for you." And I went, "Now, John Lavery, believe me, if he made a phone call, there was two consequences." And I'm in Ballymena, and I went down to see PJ, and he said, "Did he say anything?" He said, "No," he said, "he just wants to see you in Belfast now." And I said, "What is it, PJ?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "But I'll tell you one thing, son." He said, "You're either going to get fired," and he said, "at best," he said, "you maybe get a promotion." PJ, thanks a lot. I spent the 30 minutes or whatever it took me, and I didn't know whether to gut it or whether to, just take my time and think, what am I going to face down here? Because as a rep on the road, if someone in the industry decided to take a thing against you, phoned up headquarters and said, he's a bit of a, the MD was Mr. Navarre and he didn't take any prisoners. So I spent probably, and from that point of view, the worst 30 minutes of my life, driving down that road and not knowing what of facing. The way you think of, what have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? Yeah. I couldn't get a positive on it at all. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? And I went in there and he offered me the trade promotions manager's job.
Class.
So that was, other than that, just consequences of looking after, shall we say, personnel on tour when they presented a few challenges.
When drink was taken.
Well, you know what they say, what goes on tour stays on tour.
Exactly.
Stories of it was, other than this, I could fill a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been on a couple of them tours.
Yeah. To be honest, other than I suppose I've really been untouched with really sort of deep emotional challenges. Thank God.
It's great. If you could take anyone from Northern Ireland, dead or alive, out for a pint, who would you take? Where would you take them? And why?
It couldn't be one. It couldn't be one. This man across here.
Well, now you're allowed a couple now. Because I had a couple, didn't I? Aye.
We like to bend the rules for Jerry's friends.
I mean,
we'll make a session of it.
Gerry and I and Stephen McGorian, Horatio Group, who was my sales director. He was the finance director or finance manager at Guinness, became Diageo. The three of us got together. We're on top of the house or somewhere, was it? And I remember that as a brilliant, brilliant night.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like, actually, Matthew, fair play to you, it's as relaxed as this. It was, it was a night to enjoy.
That's awesome.
And I'd love to repeat that. I mean, in terms of you can't make the same night happen again and again. But
considering some of the people that you've met in your career,
that's high compliment.
I remember there was one event that we were at. And I think it has, because I took a photo, had to be the worst pint of Guinness you were ever given. I'm not going to say the venue, but there was me, you, and Nell McKenna. And it was a big award. It wasn't even awards. I tell you what it was. It was the start of, was it the Raider?
The Raider Cup?
The Raider Cup. And there was the event for the pre-launch.
The pre-launch, yeah.
And we were there for the dinner, and the alarms went off. And the kitchen had to close down.
Where was that?
Oh, no, but I'm not going to say where it was.
No, all right, okay.
But you remember that?
Yeah.
And that was a brilliant night. And then I ended up sitting beside the guy who the Canadian guy who started, or was the captain of the Belfast Giants.
Wow.
Now, if I'd have known that you had played ice hockey, I would have went, you want to be talking to your man here. Don't be talking to me. But that's still the end, even though it was the disaster of a night, but it still ended up brilliant crack. But I mean, that was a room full of celebrities.
Yeah. No, Gerry, it's people that that I don't know, make you feel like sort of like, oh God, I just love this company.
Yeah.
A lot of it because there's so much, and you think that I had the best job in the world.
Oh, without any doubt, yeah.
I'm happy to say it.
Yeah.
It was like falling off a cliff when it finished. I didn't realise it would be. But, I'd got to a certain age where, make me an offer I couldn't refuse, and that's what came along. But, afterwards I went, wow. Wow.
And then I have to say, just to squeeze in, whenever you did move on and then you started your own business,
Aye.
and the TLC, which I have to say was just the perfect name That was just because every business needs a wee bit of TLC. I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, it did work because of Terry Loughins,
Yeah.
and then
Oh, yeah,
Terry,
yeah.
Terry
There's a
Loughins
reason, yeah.
Consulting.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was brilliant.
Which is a
I mean,
good
that
cover, Matthew, isn't it?
It's class. It's absolutely
What do you
class.
actually consult on? You tell me.
That's just consultancy in
need?
general, though, is it
What
not?
do you need to hear?
yeah.
What do you need to hear?
You tell me what your problems are and the solutions to them,
Yeah.
and then I'll put them in a document and give them
I'll
back to you.
I'll put you in touch with anybody you need to. Yeah.
What was it like then, coming off the back of that cliff edge? Because that's tough. Because you're in such a fast,
you know,
and then it's just like, what am I going to do? Golf?
Exactly. And no, I didn't. As Gerry said, we launched TLC. Luckily enough, I was picked up by a couple of banks, in the sense that wanted to get the credit card business into pubs and hospitality. Everything was cash in those days, particularly in the rural setting, Matthew. If you went to wherever and somebody sort of said, put a card, and he looked at it. What are you doing? What's that? Yeah. So I was able to get those through Colin Neal and the Hospitality Ulster. They were able to sort of, shall we say, put them in my direction.
Great.
So that was good. It was so successful that the, shall we say, the large banks decided, why are we using an agent? Could we not do this ourselves? That was the end of that one.
Nice.
So that was, not mention the two banks. So
Yeah, super.
and then I worked for a charity for a while at Musgrave Park Hospital, which was very, very enlightening to see the other side of life and people, that really, God, had something. I couldn't understand how they could live with the circumstances that they had to live with. And it was 2 years doing that. And I was supposed to be in an employed reason, but I couldn't take employment out of that. But just saw me, I just saw it in a different light, sort of what I was doing and how easy it was for me to do what I did to these people who literally hadn't any future at times.
Mad.
Anyway.
What would you say then? Final question is always, if you could go back in a time machine, right, to a 15-year-old version of yourself.
Oh, God.
When you left school, and you had a couple of minutes of 15-year-old Terry's time, what sort of things would you be saying to him?
Live for today. Live for today. I said, when you asked, yesterday, history. Tomorrow, mystery. Today, it's a gift. Live it. Make the best of it. Enjoy it. Whatever. Just live for today and make the best of today. And if it enriches somebody or enriches yourself, happy days.
Wow.
Brilliant. Yep.
Terry, thank you so much.
No, Matthew, it's
Really
a pleasure.
appreciate it.
And really,
Absolute
Gerry,
pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
Jerry's got a wee something for you.
Yes, it is tradition for the podcast. For the,
Oh, yes.
Keep
Oh,
him
you
away
go.
from that.
There you go, Mr. Loughins. And enjoy that with a wee ginger ale and a bit of ice. And
Pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Perfect
thank
swerve.
you. Thoroughly enjoyed it, Rosca. Appreciate you.
pint glass as well.
Please, sir.
Do you remember a DJ called Rosca?
Do you know what? We interviewed someone and they said the exact same thing. Yeah, there was a Emperor Rosca or something. Yeah,
Gee, he was a guy. I mean, literally, he was right up there.
I's no sweetie tea though.
No, there'll never ever be another sweet.
There was only one, and there only ever will be one. Thanks again, guys. Have a great
I'm
rest of your
going
day.
to get beat up about that so much in this.